Welcome to the hottest real estate topics on the planet, keeping you up to date with all the creative ways to buy and sell real estate without bank qualifying, so anyone can build real income starting today. Here is another great show with Dealmaker Bill and Pete the Rookie.
All right, here we are at another episode of Flipping Houses for Rookies. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning, Bill. Good morning, everyone.
Extra on our recording for those that were not on Facebook. So we are on episode number 386. 386. And today's episode name or title is Live Deal Structuring for Gargantuan Creative Real Estate Profits.
Mm-hmm.
You asked for it, you got it, Peter.
Well, I remember asking. What did I do?
Last week.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
In this 1 hour creative real estate mastery episode, we will be delving into the captivating world of deal structuring. And if you are confused on what that means, it comes down to the raw math on our creative financing ability when making offers to motivated sellers. Imagine unlocking the doors to opportunities that are right under your nose and never knew they existed. Just pushing the right buttons on the calculator I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
As the real estate market dances to the ever-changing tunes of the economy, you will want these secrets in your back pocket so you can reap the huge returns they bring. And I'm not talking about just buying and selling, but instead, we're going to be rewriting the rules of how real estate transactions will go down in the future. So tune in now to get guided through the labyrinth of deals that can be made. This episode is your beacon in the foggy world of creating your new life with real estate. Let's dive into this deal mastery and emerge with insights that will reshape your future with creative real estate. Now, as I told Peter before we started,
sounds right, whatever you just said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Normally, I write a script, and I go by my script. If you've been listening to any of my podcasts, you would know this, right? That was the only thing that I wrote. However, I do have some deals that I've done. I call them mock deals because I don't want to put addresses to them because some of them I remember the addresses, some of them I don't.
Mm-hmm.
So here's how I would like to start today, Peter.
Yeah.
For a rookie, the most confusing part, and you tell me if I'm wrong, and we got people, we have people on here. Oh, I'm not even going to do the housekeeping stuff. Which, by the way, there is a link in the description for a free mastery class with 10 videos that go over all of the deal structuring that I talk about today and more.
Wow.
For free. Okay. So if you like what I'm talking about today, then you don't need a wallet. You don't need anything. Just go watch those videos. You get one every day. Okay. So that's all I'm going to talk about. And if you have any questions, go to flippinghousesforrookies.com and go to the support ticket on the top, and I will gladly answer any questions because I'm sure that when I start banging around the calculator today, there might be questions. What do you think, Peter?
No.
Because sometimes I do math backwards, but it works really well.
Oh, should I keep my calculator handy too?
If you want.
Yeah, if you need any help, I have one here.
So here's the deal. You tell me. When you first get started and you're talking to sellers, right?
Yeah.
Is it true or is it not true that you wonder which deal to make to the seller? Because we have 7 of them, 7 core strategies. So one of the things I hear the most with the rookies or the new people coming in, or somebody that's not a dealologist, which is a person that does deals, right? Or the acquisition manager. I call them a dealologist, right?
Yeah.
They want to know where to start. So there's a secret that's a obvious, not hidden, but nobody talks about it, secret. When you're making offers to a seller, unless you're a wholesaler, which I am not, unless you're a wholesaler, this does not count for wholesalers, because wholesaling ugly houses is a whole different world, which, by the way, if you know me for any length of time, is, as far as I'm concerned, the stupidest thing in the world. Because we do it, but we find them by accident. We do not make that our mainstream.
Yeah.
When you actually see how we do our slot deal, which is a sandwich lease option transfer, you're wholesaling lease options, and you have way, 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 way more chances of doing a deal because we do it with pretty houses, not ugly houses. And we're giving people 100%, up to 100% of what they owe. I'm sorry, not what they owe, of what it's worth, and still make $5, $10, $20, $30, $50, $60, $70, $80,000, depending on how much the house is being sold for.
Sure.
So I don't know why somebody would want to bash their head against the wall trying to do a wholesale deal to get a contract signed at 30, 40, 50, 60 cents in a dollar. And I have a couple of my coaching clients that were doing them at 80 cents in a dollar because they were selling them to some of the funds, like BlackRock and all those kind of things, which that pretty much is over, because I don't know if you see in the news recently, but they are lobbying hard in the Senate to try to outlaw or put laws against those guys buying up too much property. They got too, like they say, the saying goes, hogs get fat, pigs get slaughtered. So there you go.
Yeah, a little too greedy.
So when your name comes up in the Senate of the United States and they're trying to block you from doing business, I would think that you might have made it to the second tier of being greedy. So there you go. So in any event, the most common question I get is, what deal do I do first? And the secret that I allude to right now is called equity. Now, the definition of equity is not how much the house is worth to what you owe. That's not equity. See, if you go on to Zillow and you go on to Realtor.com, or you go on to Trulia or any of the other websites that there are, because there are quite a few, Redfin, there's quite a few of them. Those are appraised values that are done with an algorithm. Meaning a computer software system that figures out how much the house is worth. The problem with algorithms, the number one problem with algorithms, are they don't have a checkbook. Algorithms are not going to write the checks for the houses. So real equity is the amount of money that's brought to the closing minus what's owed.
Yep.
That's real equity. That's true equity. The other is just kind of fake equity. Okay, because you're just kind of, being crude, and I'm sorry for being crude, but there's no other way for me to even think of this. It's like mental masturbation. You're just playing with yourself in your own mind, saying, well, it's, I got $800,000 worth of equity. Well, only if somebody's willing to pay that price. So what that means is, when you're making offers, the secret that's obvious to me, but is not always obvious to others, is you make offers based on the equity. In other words, another word for equity is profit. Right? So it's the profit in the deal for the seller. So if the seller owes $60,000 and you're willing to give them $100,000, they have a $40,000 profit, or in this case, we call it equity. Right? So it would seem to be smart or intelligent that you negotiate the equity and nothing else. Does this make sense, Peter?
Yes, because that's all the person is going to get. It doesn't matter what the value of the house is, the price of the house. If it's a $200,000 house and he owes 210, well, there's no equity there. As a matter of fact, he owes money. So the only thing he can really get out of the house is that eventual equity, or perceived profit that you can at least talk about.
Right. So with that said, Peter, that means the only thing that the seller is in control of is their own money. They're not in control of what they owe the bank. They're not in control of what the liens are and what the taxes are and what the insurance is. And they're not in control. Well, they are in somewhat control of the condition of the property, but most of them don't want to spend the money to do that. So they're kind of have-assed in and out on the control so they're in control of the amount of money that they want.
Yeah.
So when I'm negotiating, and I'm going to get around to the deals in about 2 minutes here. I'm just trying to set it up so you understand when we start talking about the deals that there's actually a pattern to making offers. There's a pattern that you should follow. It's not a sequence, because a sequence is 1, 2, 3. A pattern is if you see this, do that, and if you see that, do this, right? So it's a pattern. It's like there are certain things that are in place that trigger you to do other things.
Yeah, it's almost more like a puzzle where you have whatever piece comes up, you put it in until you're done and have a full picture.
Right.
And it could go in a certain sequence, but I mean, as long as it all gets there without confusing anybody,
that's a great analogy. Yeah. That's a great analogy. Putting a puzzle together. You put pieces. You might start in the left corner. I might start in the right corner. Somebody else will start at the bottom. But the point is that you keep putting pieces together until you get a full picture.
Yeah.
It's a great analogy. So here's my point. If you know what the equity is, or if you know how much the seller is in control of the deal, or which part of the deal they're in control of, your negotiating is a lot better. So let's go back to the $100,000 house. If they owe $80,000 and you offer them $60,000, what's going to happen?
Well, first they're going to lose 20, so they're not going to be too interested.
Unless they're wicked desperate. And there are people like that. But I'm going to tell you right now, the wholesalers that are buying these properties like that, they're calling 10, 15,000 people a month. That's how they're doing 5, 6, 7 deals a month, is they're calling 10, 15, 20,000 people. One of my coaching clients, he had 10 virtual assistants working for him, dialing every single day, 8 hours a day. And his entire job was to supply those 10 or 15 virtual assistants every day with leads. That's all he talked about.
Wow.
He actually backed himself into a corner with a job because he needed to do that every day. Him and his brother split activities.
Yeah.
And they just pounded phones, and they did 7 or 8 deals a month. Now, they were also realtors. Right. And for some reason, I could never get them to convert over into well, we made you an offer for the wholesale deal. Now what about the creative real estate?
Yeah. Well, if they say it's no to wholesaling, well, then you're done. The phone hangs up and you walk away. Then there's 9,994 calls to make. But with creative, you have a couple of other possibilities. At least try them. You catch some. You got other
chances. You got other chances to make offers. Okay. So with this said, many years ago, more than a decade ago, I'm saying almost maybe 2 decades, maybe it's at least 15 years ago, maybe more. I was training an acquisition manager, and we were sitting in between 12 and 15 houses per week. Now, back then it was easy. Well, you may not think it was easy. I thought it was a lot easier because
it's easier than today.
Yeah, you put signs out. We did yellow letters if we didn't have enough. If we didn't have enough leads, we did yellow letters, and it would attract 12 to 50 in 3 towns around us. I did 3 towns in New Haven County in Connecticut.
Yep.
I think we did Wallingford, Meriden, and Cheshire. I could be wrong on Cheshire. I don't remember what it was, but we did 3 towns. So I never went more than a half an hour to get to an appointment. The point is that we did thousands of these appointments, and we were buying 7 or 8 houses a month, closing on 3 or 4 because deals would fall apart, right? I'm telling you that because I needed to teach my acquisition manager, because he used to say to me, "How did you know to make that offer?"
Yeah,
because he'd sit in the house and he would watch me, right? So that turned into what I'm going to tell you right now, and then we're going to actually do some live deals with it.
Okay. Yep.
That turned into this little grid that I made, and that turned into the presentation pack, which we used in coaching for a very long time until COVID. And then the presentation pack kind of went by the wayside because the world of electronics has taken over, and we now use Creative REI Reply. And I promise you, I can't even emphasize the headspace in my mind on what I expect to have happen in 2024. We are, by all means, going to blow up the industry with automation. I mean, I have some ideas. We're working on stuff in the background. I think it's going to be at a point where we are going to get the robots to do most of the work for us. I mean, it's already at 90%, but we're working on, right now, the robots do a lot of lead generation, but I want the robots to actually, I showed you guys in the coaching group how to make a video of you talking to your customer by just putting numbers in a script, and the video is already made for you. So it's that kind of stuff. Okay, it's going to be huge, and that's just the beginning. Okay, but the point is that you need to know what we're going to teach you right now. And here's the point that I want to get to: is the grid starts at the top. It's called the hierarchy. That was named by one of my other friends. His name is Joe. Just to explain it, so if you start at the top of the grid, there's 7 deals.
Yep.
So at the top of the grid, you have slot deal, which is a sandwich, lease, option, transfer. It's like wholesaling lease options. At that point, you have 100% loan to value ratio. In other words, they owe 100% of what it's worth. There is no equity, zero equity. The next one down on the grid is an option. The option, they owe up to 90% of what it's worth, loan to value, right? So that means there's 10% worth of equity.
Right.
The next one down is what we call a rent to own, which is very similar to the slot deal, which is a sandwich lease option transaction, except in a rent to own, we stay in the deal because it's an 85% loan to value ratio, and it's got 15% worth of equity. And in that deal, we like to get 20 to 25% cash flow,
right?
Which we get all the time. Okay. So you're going to stay in the deal. This is the first place where you start talking about money now, money monthly, money later. Money now is deposits from your seller. It's the difference between what you get from money now is from the deposit you get from your buyer and what you have to give your seller. It's the in-between money. So if you promise your seller you'll give him $5,000 and you collect $10,000, your money now is $5,000. Okay, so the rent to own is the first place we start checking for money now, money monthly, money later. Because the other two are just money now. There's no monthly or there's no later. Meaning the slot deal and the option deal. Okay.
Yep.
So as we descend down, the next one is subject to, or as we call it, getting the deed. And that one has an 80% loan to value ratio. In other words, they only owe up to 80% of what the house is worth or what you think it's worth. So there's 20% worth of cash flow. 20% worth of equity.
Yeah, equity.
Okay. The next one down is retail, rehab retail, which is flipping or a whole, fix and flip. That's a 70% loan to value ratio and 30% equity. The next one below that is wholesaling, which is 60% loan to value and 40% worth of wholesale. And then the next one down, which is the last one, is owner financing. And owner financing is 100% equity, no loan. So it's free and clear. Now, I use the terms loosely, but they everything means something to me. So owner financing is a free and clear property. Seller financing is if they have a mortgage and they still have equity. So like suppose you had a subject to deal, they owe 150 and you're going to give them 175. The $25,000 is seller financing.
Right.
And I call them a difference because seller financing is treated different than owner financing. Owner financing, we do no interest, no payment. I mean, no interest means we pay principal only payments, and we have complete control over what we can do with the property.
Yep.
Okay. Seller financing is usually a note or a loan in second position after the bank.
Mm-hmm.
And often it kind of duplicates what the bank is doing. So seller financing, we sometimes get seller finance notes for interest free, and we don't make payments until we cash them out. Sometimes we do so. So they're just treated a little bit differently. So that's why we name them differently.
Right.
So Sam, I can't really answer your question. He's asking if so is Airbnb a successful company or no? I have no idea. I don't use Airbnb. I don't do that kind of stuff. So I can't really, I'm sorry, I can't answer your question. I mean, I guess they're successful. I have a lot of friends of mine that use them and make a lot of money with them. So I'm supposing, but I don't use them. I can't give you a solid answer.
Something to Google.
Sorry about that. Yeah. All right. So does this make sense?
Yes.
So
Definitely.
if we're going to make offers, okay, it would be best if we knew what the equity is. Now, if we're making an offer on a slot deal, Peter, do we need to know how much equity they have?
Not really.
Okay, so if a free and clear person, a person that owes nothing on their house, we'll say they got a $200,000 house and they have no mortgage, they don't owe anything, and they want $200,000 and they're stuck on it.
Yep.
Would we do a slot deal on that?
You could.
Right. So slot deal doesn't mean they have zero equity. It means they're giving you zero equity.
Yeah. So sometimes I think of it as if there's zero equity, you can't do any of the deals below it because they require some equity. So it's kind of like if it's no equity, well, that's kind of the only deal you could do.
Right.
I was at a workshop years ago before, just as you and I got together, and the last day out of 3, they threw an example on the board. There's no equity. Can you guys buy it? We're looking at how are we going to buy that? There's no equity. Then, oh, wait a minute, the slot deal. Right.
So the last thing I want to cover before we go any further is there's 4 ways to make money on real estate. 4 ways. I usually say 2, and I'm going to tell you the reason why in a minute. So there's appreciation, which means that the price of the house goes up as time goes on. There's depreciation, which means you get to write it off with the government, or it goes down. So those 2 we don't count because to me those are arbitrary numbers. Because appreciation is depending on the market, and you don't control the market.
Yeah.
Depreciation is dependent upon your tax level or your tax schedule or wherever you are with your taxes. Right? And then 3 and 4 is equity and cash flow.
Yeah.
Now those we can control. So that's why I say there's only 2 places to make money with real estate, and that's equity, buy low, sell high, or cash flow. So I have made a lot of deals and just made cash flow. Like for example, I have a property that I make $1,000 a month on. I have another property that I make $770 a month on it, and I overpaid for the property by $12,000. But I've had a tenant in that house, I bet you now, for 3 years. So let me see here. So 770 times 36, that's $27,720.
Yeah. Beside that, the $12,000 didn't come out of your pocket. That's just on paper.
That's what I owe.
Yeah. It's not like you didn't have to write it. You have to write a check at the end. Right. It'll come out, but you'll be so far ahead. That's just totally fine.
Right. Now, in this particular case, I'm telling you how much I made at $770 a month.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm not telling you is I got $12,000 up front, and I still have like $20,000 in the back end for equity.
Mm-hmm.
But I've already made $27,720, and that does not include the late fees that she pays because she's late, and she's got $150 a month late fee. So there's multiple months out of the year I'll get $150. That also does not include that she has an option agreement that goes up 0.5% per month past her first year. So the price of the house goes up 6% a year. That's appreciation.
Yeah.
I'm not even adding all that number. So if you add in all those numbers, I probably have $50,000 worth of profit on a house that I overpaid 12 grand for.
Mm-hmm.
That's cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
I made my own equity, and I made my own cash flow. And that's what creative real estate is all about. See, creative real estate is not about replacing the money that's already in the deal.
Mm-hmm.
That's what the realtor system does. If somebody wants to replace the money, if I'm a seller and I owe $150,000 and I want to get my cash out of it, they're looking for somebody to replace that money with bank's money. So that's that, and it costs them 12 to 15%. If they use a realtor, it's going to cost them 15% for closing costs. If they don't use a realtor, it's going to cost them 10% for closing costs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the point is this: they have to discount their money by 10 or 15%. Right. So if they're going to sell a house for $200,000 at 10%, they have to right away the first 20 grand is going to go to all the professionals for doing the closing.
Yeah, not just the
negotiating and repairs and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And repairs means the inspector spooking them and just giving contingencies at the closing, right? So they're giving a discount. So if they owe 150 and they're getting 180, they're really only getting 30 grand, but they think they're getting 50 grand. So you need to know all this when you're negotiating, when you get down in the lower deals.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's take this house I have here. It says the house is worth $200,000. The seller owes $190. The monthly payments are $1,380 in current. The house is pretty, doesn't need repairs. The seller has recently been divorced, has a new relationship, and is living there now. So they have two houses. So she's living, I'm going to say she. I don't know if it was a guy or girl, but they're living with the new person they're meeting. So they have two houses.
Yep.
So two divorced people got together and they both had houses. Right? And only need one house. So they have two houses, they only need one house. So they're an accidental landlord. That's what we call them, an accidental landlord, because an accidental landlord means they don't want to pay the expenses at the other house. So they rent it thinking that somebody's going to pay the mortgage, and that landlording is easy.
Yep.
Okay.
Until it isn't.
Until it isn't. Right. So what's the first thing we do on this deal? So we have these numbers. The house is worth $200,000. The seller owes $190. So what's the first thing we do?
Well, we figure out what the loan to value ratio is.
Right. So we take the $190,000. So we put 190,000 into the calculator. You hit the divide button, and then you type in 200,000 and hit the equals button, and it comes out to be 0.95. So that means there's 95% loan to value ratio.
Right.
So that means there's 5% equity. So which deal should we offer them? Or which deals? Where do we start?
Well, if there's almost no equity, 5% is almost nothing. So the slot deal would be the one that could work.
It's the only deal you can offer them and make money. If you go below that, now realize if it was 80%, which we'll do that in a minute, but if it's 80%, well, we'll do that when it's time. So for right now, the only deal we can do, the only offer we could make based on the loan to value ratio is a sandwich lease option transaction. And by the way, they will gladly do this with you because they don't want to come to the closing table with money. Because if they sold the house, they're going to try to sell it for sale by owner thinking that they're not going to pay any fees. Everybody does that.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you, I don't care. I had a coaching client in Texas, and he told me my numbers were high because they only pay 8% closing fees. I don't care how you if you look at the hard numbers, right? First of all, let's just do the numbers. So 3% of your 10% is going to be negotiating because nobody's going to pay full price. So people pay, it's a national average, 97% of the asking price. So there's a 3% negotiating.
Yep.
Right? Then there's 3% for the repairs. And like I said before, if you have a house that's more than 3 or 4 or 5 years old, that means the code issues are different now than they were when the house was built. So you could have just spent $43,000 on a house like I did and still have $16,000 worth of repairs. And that's because there's code violations that you didn't do anything for, like the back deck, instead of the post going, the railings, how do I say that? The runners on the railings, instead of them being 9 inches apart like they were, they needed to be 6 inches apart. So he wanted me to put all new railings around the porch. Right? There's been times where the stairs are supposed to be 6 inches high and mine are 8 inches high. There's things like that just pop up, radon and all kinds of things. It's just
electric panel. There's water dripping. Yeah. My son just bought a house. I just sold one. The nice house. Like, what's wrong with the electric panel? There goes $3,000. Like, what do you mean water got in from the stack into the whatever? Yeah, right. It just happens.
And these things you don't know about because you think the house is good, but when the inspector goes in there, the inspector is designed to scare you, to scare the seller. And once you spook the seller, you have a choice. You either do the repairs or give them the money. And I call this bribe money because you're either bribing them by doing the repairs that don't need to be done, or you're giving them money at closing so they stay in the deal. Because if you don't do one of those two things, they walk away, you don't have a deal. So it's bribe money. So they're 6%. They're 6%. And then on top of that, you put another 3% for closing costs. I mean, it's 1% in closing cost just for the conveyance tax in most places. Some places are 1.25%. Yep. That means that the city and the state, wherever you are, split that money. Now, some places like Florida, it's even higher than that. Okay.
Oh, really?
So we count it as 3%. Plus, you're going to have to pay some legal fees if you want documents drafted, right? Plus, you're going to have to have prorations. A proration of taxes. If you're buying it, if you're buying on tax day, that's fine. But if taxes are in January and July and you're buying in March, that means you have to give the seller the months that you're going to use the house, right? So there's proration, right? So also water is prorated, sewer is prorated, oil oil for the heat is prorated.
There's oil in the tank.
It all adds up to 3%. Now, I get a lot of support tickets talking about this closing ratio, which I just want to cover real quick. And I want to get back to the numbers. The closing ratio, the 3%, if you're doing transactions, the 3% is what the buyer will pay if you are doing the transaction. All the other numbers you're gonna make as your profit because you're going to do it. The professionals aren't going to do it. You're going to do it. So the most that it's going to cost the buyer at the end, when they get to the end of the 2 years of the lease option, is 3%, and they know they have to pay that. That's part of. Well, the seller has to pay the conveyance tax, which is 1%, and then the buyer pays the rest. So that's how it breaks down. So in this particular case, we have a 95% loan to value ratio. The house is worth $200. Seller owes $190. How much are we going to pay for monthly payments, Peter? Says they're currently $1,380. So how much are we going to pay?
Oh, well, we'll pay that.
Yeah. So I say, Peter, this is how you figure out monthly payments.
Yeah.
Peter, how much are you paying now with all the taxes and insurance and everything included per month?
Total $1,380.
That's how much we'll pay, okay?
And
that's all you do. Because remember from other podcasts, what we need to get is 4 numbers.
Yeah.
To make a transaction. We need to get the price, the lowest, their lowest bottom price or their best price. We need to get the monthly payment amount. We need to get the, and by the way, if we're not doing a creative deal, do we still need the monthly payment amount?
Well, what kind of deal would you talking about?
Yeah, so we would still need to do that. Suppose we're going to pay cash for this house and we need to go get hard money. Do we need to know how much the monthly payment is going to be? Yes, we do need to know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So we need to know the monthly payment, whether it's the seller giving it to us or whether it's a private lender or a hard money lender or a bank, because otherwise, how do we know what our cash flow is going to be?
Yeah.
Right. So we need to know how much, starting over again, what's their best price, how much are the monthly payments, right? What's the duration that they're willing to go with those monthly payments, and only if they talk about it a deposit amount of money. Right. Now, if we're doing a hard money loan, are we going to have deposit money? Yeah, we're going to pay points and closing costs and all that kind of stuff, right? So we need to know that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So this works. This doesn't work just for creative deals. These four numbers will eventually get you to the mystifying and to me it's like a god. And I don't mean to say that derogatorily, but it's like a holy thing for me. It's like the holy grail for me. Is the money now, money monthly, money later, because that equalizes the entire, that makes sure that I have all the numbers and everything that I need in a deal to make sure it's going to work. So the price, the monthly payment, the duration, and down payment if they need one is all I need, right? Now, suppose I have repairs. Where does that money go?
Did you have to make repairs?
Yeah, in the four spots, in the price, the payment, the duration, and the money now. I mean, the down payment money. Where's the repairs go?
I would guess it goes into the price, because you'd have to add that to the price.
No, you would want to put that in the deposit money because you're going to need that money now to do the repairs. So you may not be giving the seller a deposit, but you might need $20,000 to go renovate it.
Oh, 20. Okay.
Right.
So I was, yeah. Well, is there a difference between like a real renovation, like a big number, which is usually more than we get on a deposit, and just like the cleanup stuff? The 2,000 or 3,000 for cleanup, that would be okay for deposit. What if it's really a big renovation and there's not enough deposit money to cover that?
Well, I'm just saying that these four numbers cover you on the money now, money monthly, money later.
Somewhere.
So if you need to put $20,000 down now as a deposit, you may not be able to do a rent to own with this property. You might have to sell it now to get the money back.
Okay. Yeah, that helps you figure out what to do. By the way, this is a really good reason why when we do all the numbers, like the property that you overpaid. How many people go, oh, I'm not overpaying for it, and it's over. Right. You do all the numbers, do all the calculations, look down the road, do all the math, and say, well, that was worth it. Even if like you have the three numbers and one of them's bad and two of them are really good, you might do it, right?
Right. So I don't understand Sam's question here. I think I do, but I'm not sure.
Let's see, Sam. Let's read. So what goes into being quoted properly or have a reliable invoice?
So I think he's talking about repairs. So I'm not sure. So if you could give us feedback. But from my repairs, and this changed at COVID, but I always did per square foot. So I used $10, $20, $30, and sometimes $40 per square foot. $10 is what you're talking about. Is kind of like $10 was paint and carpet, and $20 was renovation. Which, by the way, to me, renovation means remove and replace. So you remove and replace the bathroom. You remove and replace the kitchen, right? A renovation is different than a remodel. A remodel is when you start getting permits, taking walls down, doing electrical permits, plumbing permits. That's a whole different number. Yeah. But just a renovation, if I'm going to replace the toilet and the tub, replace the toilet and the vanity and reglaze the tub and put some tile down, that's a renovation.
There's a whole show on that now on HGTV. It's called No Demo Reno, where she doesn't move any walls. There's no permits. There's no crazy plumbing stuff. And she makes it look beautiful, just replacing things nicely. She goes, see, no demo reno. So why not? So
Sam, I changed those numbers. So it's $10, $20, $30, $40, right? So $10 is paint and carpet, maybe some landscaping, yard appeal. $20 was what I used for a very long time for renovations. $30 was if I had to do renovations like remove and replace, and then paint and carpet and all that kind of stuff. And then if I had to do like maybe a furnace or a roof or something like that, one of the big ones. And then $40 was if I had to do all the renovations, I had to do a furnace, a roof, and I had to do a driveway and big numbers like that.
Yeah.
Okay. I've since changed those in COVID and went up $5 per one. So it's 15, 25, 35, and 45 because COVID, because the expenses of COVID.
Yeah.
So
That's
if
not
you
terrible.
just-
I thought it'd be 10 more for each, but 5 more.
Yeah, well, in some places it is. But the point is this: if you take $25 times 1,000 square foot, it's going to be 25 grand.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I always use those numbers to gauge me on whether or not I should need to do repairs, and it always comes within $2,000. It always has.
And that's with no quotes, not taking 2 weeks to get contractors while you're losing the deal. Just a very good close estimate with your own eyeballs from experience.
Okay, so let's do another deal here.
Yep.
So let's say the house is worth 200,000, seller owes 120, right? But their payments are $1,160 and they're 3 months behind.
Mm.
So what do we do first?
Price.
No, we know the price.
Yes, no loan to that. What was the price of the house again? Or the value?
So Sam says, yeah, he's
Yes,
active
Sam.
this morning. Great content, Bill Hawthorne and Coca Cola. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, so we take 120,000 divided by 200,000,
Mm-hmm.
and that means we have a bad number in my calculator. So 120,000 divided by, because I multiply it by 200,000 equals 60% loan to value.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this was the point that I was going to make earlier. So if it's 60%, which deal is 60% in our grid? That's
60.
a wholesale deal, right?
Yes, it could be.
So a wholesale deal is the lowest point that you can go, and you can do any deal above it.
Mm.
So that means a rehab is 70% loan to value.
Mm-hmm.
Getting the deed or subject to is 80% loan to value,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you keep going up until it's 100%. So where would you start, Peter, when you're making this offer? I would start at subject to, but that's just because I'm a subject to addict.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but you could start at at wholesale. So you could try to do a wholesale deal with it.
Right. Now, I have been over this with you. I heard you say it a few times, and I finally figured out why you start lowest, because you have to explain that to people like me. The reason you start with the lowest possible deal of the hierarchy, the levels, is you make the most profit at the lower levels, correct?
Right. Yep.
The lower you can go on this, you can get more profit. There's more profit if you can wholesale it cleverly, which we don't want to do. So the next one up is subject to, get the deed. There's more profit with that in the long run than just a slot
I want to clarify. You're right. I want to clarify what you're saying.
Yeah.
So money now, money monthly, money later.
Mm-hmm.
So money now and money later is equity.
Yes.
So you can make more profit with the equity. Remember, I told you there's 2 ways to make money with real estate: equity, buy low, sell high, and cash flow.
Yep.
So this is the holy grail, because if you can get at 60% loan to value ratio, it probably needs work. So it's not going to be 60% when you're done, because you're going to put money into it. But the point is, at 60%, you have equity, and then you still have cash flow.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're looking at the great equalizer, which is money now, money monthly, money later, 3 M's, right? When you're looking at those, you're going to have all of those with big numbers, because realize that you're realize the formula: money now, money monthly, money later. Think of that for a second. So I told you there's 2 ways to make money with real estate.
Yeah.
There's the equity and there's the cash flow. So technically, the 2 numbers you need is money monthly, which is cash flow, money later, which is equity. But we do a rent to own, and we take some of the equity and we get it now. So that's why we call money now.
That's right. It is from the equity, though. That's your point. It is from the
It is from
equity.
the equity.
But you want
So
that
if
up
you
front because, hey, you're getting a house. I want some assurance. Give me money now from the
right,
deposit. That's what the
right.
bank does.
So if you're making $100,000
Mhm.
equity, money later, you're pulling $10,000 into the future, which is now.
Well,
I'm sorry,
into the
pulling it
current.
out of the future into the present time.
Yeah.
So that means if you get $10,000 now your money later is going to be 90 grand, but they're both equity.
Yeah. And it adds up to the whole 100,000 that you're expecting.
Right.
Good.
So money now is like money now is what you use to like pay debt and pay off your loans and pay college tuitions and all that stuff. Money
Mhm.
monthly is what you retire off of,
Yeah.
right? Because if you need $4,000 a month, figure out how to get $6,000 a month because you want $2,000 for all the upsets and the non-payers and all the things that come up, right? So you want a cushion or just use it for reserves.
Yeah.
And the money later is retirement money,
Yep.
right? By the way, when you're paying monthly, what's the best part about paying monthly?
But
Is
being
you're
paid.
going to be, yeah, when you're doing your monthly payments, we look at the cash flow this month, right?
Yeah.
What we don't look at is we don't look at the principal reduction, which actually turns into money later,
That's right.
right? So
Yeah.
if you have a mortgage of 150,000 and you're paying $1,000 a month, and 400 is going to interest and 600 is going to principal, that means every time and it changes, but every time you make a $600 payment, that's actually money now that turns into money later because you're paying down your mortgage.
Yeah. It's money now
Right.
in the house. That's like piggy bank. Chick, chick, tick,
Right.
ching. And then you cash it out later.
Yeah. So what that means is that if you owe $100,000 and you make a year's worth of payments at a reduction of $600 a month, right? 600 times 12
7,200.
is 7,200.
Mm.
So that means when you go to pay off the mortgage at the end of the year, you don't owe 100,000. You owe 100,000 minus the 7,200 because you paid it already.
That's right.
So you don't count that in the cash flow because that turns into equity.
Yeah.
So even if you're looking at a property thinking you're only making $400 a month positive cash flow, my partner Sean has trouble with this. He's like, why would I want to only make $400 a month positive cash flow? But he's not looking at the other numbers. He's only looking at one number, and it's stopping him from like doing more deals because he's not counting the $600 a month in equity. So really, if you're making $400 a month plus $600 a month principal reduction, how much are you making a month? You're making $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
But we don't count it that way because that money that's later could change, right? It's not a promise. It's a promise to appear, but it's not a definite thing because the value of the house could go down.
Yep.
In the future, right?
But it usually goes up. So it's probably better, but we're being conservative on that.
But that's why we put the money. That's why we put it in money later. But you're still making $1,000 a month. We just don't put it there because you're not getting it this month.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why I'm telling you when you're looking at these numbers. I know I'm kind of like vomiting all over you guys. This is the reason why I write scripts is so I don't overwhelm people. And I don't mean to be arrogant. It's just that these are a lot of numbers. I'm like throwing a lot of stuff out here.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully you're tracking with me on what we're saying here. And you get all the innuendos of a deal because you got to think of them like this. If you don't, you know what I mean? I mean, it's like an auto mechanic, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's looking at a car, right? And somebody's telling him, oh, the engine's not running right. And you say to them, what do you mean the engine's not running right? Well, I can't get the car to go fast enough. And the mechanic thinks, oh, I better go look at the engine and try to tune the engine up.
Mm-hmm.
If the mechanic did that, the auto mechanic did that, he would be wrong.
Yeah.
Because you can't look just at the engine because there's a transmission. And the first thing I would look at is the brakes. Are the brakes stuck on and stopping the car from moving?
My rear brakes were kind of frozen and slowing me down on the highway till I get everything fixed up.
See?
So I would never think of that, but I have good mechanics.
So you understand what I'm saying? So if you bring it in and say, my engine's not running right because I'm not going fast enough, you're not looking at the whole car. You're not looking at the transmission. You're not looking at the brakes. You're not looking at all the other things that could slow the car down other than the engine. And when
Yeah.
we're doing money now, money monthly, money later, we're looking at the entire car.
Yeah.
We're making sure that all the pieces and the parts are there in the transaction so that you could make the most amount of money for the least amount of work.
Right.
That's why I call it the great equalizer, because otherwise you can't make a deal.
The other thing that I like that you do, not to drive anybody crazy, is with the three numbers, if a seller asks for one of those, like a lot of one of those, you can pull another one down to compensate. Like, well, you want that much a month? Well, then I can only pay a certain amount, or vice versa. It gives you
So let's give an
some
example.
leverage.
So I have an owner finance deal, which means it's completely free and clear. The house is worth, we'll say, 300,000. I can afford to pay the guy or the seller, we'll say a girl or guy. I can afford to pay them, we'll say 350.
Yeah.
I would prefer to pay 330, but I say three. Well, let's just say 330, 10% over.
Okay.
Okay. Well, if I had a bank loan and I paid 5% interest, it's going to take me 30 years to pay it off, and I'm going to do 2.5 to 3 times the amount of 300,000. So I'm going to pay almost $1 million because of the interest.
That's right.
So first of all, if I only overpay by 10%, I'm paying $30,000. That's fine. But the reason why I do that is because I say to them, I'm giving you principal only payments. I'm not paying you any interest. So I got to make it worthwhile for the seller to do this for me, because why would he want to give me $300,000 for 10 years and not make anything off of it?
Sure.
If I give him 350, who cares? Because if he gives me a 10-year mortgage, it's going to be worth more than 350 in 10 years anyway. So what do I care?
Right.
Plus, if I give him $1,000 down a month, right? I take the renter's money from the lease option. I take the renter's money, who's probably paying $1,700 or $1,800 or we'll say $2,000 a month. I'm gonna pay the taxes. I'm gonna pay the insurance. I'm gonna make my profit, and I'm gonna give the seller $1,000 a month. So every month I get $1,000 worth of equity.
Yeah, $12,000 a year.
If I go 5 years and $1,000 a month, that's 60 months. That's $60,000. I just reduced my mortgage. At the end of 5 years, I only owe him $290.
Yeah.
My seller is going to give me $360. So I just made $60,000 because when I close, because the seller is not going to get. I'm sorry, the buyer is not going to get the principal reduction.
You are.
Yeah. So. Yeah. So you were making a point, and I was trying to show something.
Well, it's just if you overpay, you then make payments without interest to compensate.
Right.
You just the numbers.
I know what it was. So what I'm saying is, so if the seller says to me, I want interest, I don't want to do this owner finance that way. I want interest. So instead of offering them 330, I'll say to them, well, if you want interest, I can only give you 275. So it's the give and take, like what you're talking about. So if they want something, I'll be like, no problem, I'll give it to you, but it changes how much I'm going to pay you.
Yeah.
I'm going to adjust my numbers.
But you could also say, well, I'll give you $350 for the property, no interest. I'll give you more money
right
in the long run. And then he doesn't have to pay taxes on the interest that he's making, And I always tell a person, what do you need interest for? You're not a bank.
Right.
You have to pay the secretary, the mortgage, the loan, the house.
Well, the interesting thing is, and I'll make this point, I want to go back to this deal before we have to end off. It looks like we probably will do a couple weeks of this deal structuring thing because we have a lot to talk about. So we'll do this for a few weeks and see what happens. I need your feedback, though. When you're wherever you're listening, I need to know if this is the type of format you want. If not, then we'll change it again and we'll do something. We'll do whatever you want. So there are 3 payments behind of $1,160. Okay, so if you do $1,160 times 3, that means they're $3,488 behind.
Yeah.
So where do you get that money?
Well, you can get it from the deposit, couldn't you?
Yep. Also, the house needs $10,000 worth of work. So house is worth $200, seller owes $120. There are 3 payments behind. House needs $10,000 worth of work. Seller's moving, has a new job, trying to change their life, and is flexible on how to get help with the situation. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the 1160 times 3, and I would really do times 4 because by the time you're getting the deal done. So let's do 1160 times 4 because by the time you get everything done, it'll be another month. So that's 4640 plus the 10 grand. Gives us some weird number. I gotta hit the calculator. So
14,000
1160,
something.
yeah, times 4 equals plus 10,000 equals 14,640.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's what I do. I take the $14,640, and I add it to what they owe, which is 120,000.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's 134,640.
Okay.
134,640. So I'm going to round it up to 135,000. 135,000, right?
Yep.
Divided by the 200,000 gives me 67.5%. So I have a 68% loan to value ratio on this house.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm going to keep the house, that just bumped me up to a rehab retail deal, which is 70% loan to value ratio.
That's right.
But I'm going to tell you what I would do from experience.
Okay.
Because if I do rehab retail, I have to go find that $135,000 and cash them out.
That's right. You have to buy the house outright. Plus have the money. Yeah. You have to pay them. And it's all, then you own the house, you do the renovation, then you sell it later. So yeah, you have to borrow the whole amount.
So the rule that I used for 25 years, up until we went to a seminar and you and I had a big realization and we figured this out.
Mm-hmm.
The rule has always been the way you buy the house is the way you sell the house.
Yeah.
So if you pay cash for it, you sell it for cash.
Yeah.
But the realization that I had 25 years or 27 years into my career is that doesn't have to be the case, because you can pay cash for the house, but you can get a private lender, which is usually retirement money, like IRA money or Roth IRA money or 401ks, or there's a lot of people that have these things that you don't know about, especially somebody that's been working on a job for 10 plus years. They have 401k money or they have retirement money that you can borrow.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You would borrow that $135,000 for 7 years, 5, 7, 10 years, because they don't need that money.
They can't.
So it used to be if you paid cash for the house, you would sell the house for cash. If you get terms on the house, you would sell the house on terms. But that switched everything around, because if you get a network of some people that are using that you can use IRA money with, you can now turn it into take a cash deal, get a monster great deal at cash, and then borrow private money, and then do a lease option with somebody for 2 years or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so just as a side note.
Yep.
But in this particular case, what I would do is I wouldn't want to go raise the money if I could help it.
Mm-hmm.
I would just turn it into a subject to deal.
Mm-hmm.
I would take over the monthly payment. I would take over the 120, because it says seller's moving, has a new job, trying to change their life, and is flexible on how to get help with this situation.
Yeah.
So they're flexible. So you tell them, I'll take over your monthly payments. I'll catch up your payments, which is the $4,500, and I'm going to do the renovation.
Mm-hmm.
So now what happens is now all you need to come up with, so you need to raise $15,000.
Mm-hmm.
Now here's what I did for a very, very long time, very, very long time, which is kind of a little bit of a twist, is if I knew I needed $15,000, I would go out to my private lender community and borrow $20,000. Right? So that means I would have the money to pay the $1,160 in second position. So now I owe $140. Right? I'm going to owe $140.
Yeah.
$140,000, right? Divided by $200,000 equals 70%.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Now watch this. 200,000 times 80% is 160.
Mm-hmm.
So I could technically borrow $40,000 from a private lender in second position.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yep.
And take $15,000 and pay off the loan and do the $10,000 worth of work and have $25,000 left over. So now I got $25,000 at the closing. And then when I go sell the house for, we'll say $220, because we can sell it on owner financing now, I'm going to get another 10% or say 5%. So 220 times 5% is another $11,000.
Yep.
So by the time I go from day one to, we'll say, day 60, because usually you could do the renovations. You could do the renovations to do that. We'll say 60 days. Right? So in 60 days, you're going to make $36,000 upfront money, because you took some money from the lender, right? And you took some money from the buyer, and you got $36,000. But the reason why I'm going to do that is because my payment is $1,160 a month, and I can afford to pay out of my cash flow, because I'll probably get $2,000 a month for this house.
Yeah.
I can afford to pay my private lender on that money. Right, so let's say you're going to borrow $40,000 from the lender, right? Am I going too fast?
No, well, I'm okay. Hey, if you've never done a deal, it's too fast. But listen to the other podcast. But if you've done any real estate, this is fine.
So if you borrow $40,000 and pay 9%, that's $3,600 a year divided by 12. That means you have a $300 a month payment. So that would take your payment from $1,160, right?
That's how I do that. Do that again. That sounds high. Do it again.
Yeah. So if you do 40,000 times 9% is $3,600 a month. That's $3,600 a year, which is $300 a month.
Yeah.
Right. Divided by 300. So now if you take the 1,160 plus the 300, that puts you at 1,460 a month. But you can still get 15. You still can get 1,900 or 2,000. So you're good.
Yeah. But
so
that's why. But that's why we don't want to borrow $135,000, because the interest on that is a bit high. Right. By the end of the month, there'd be nothing left. But that in between thing, just to get the house, like 40,000, that works out.
So now what happens is you're going to take over the mortgage payment of $120,000. You're going to need $15,000 to pay the past payments and do the $10,000 worth of work.
Yeah.
You're going to borrow up to $160,000, which puts you at 80% loan to value, which is a subject to deal. So I brought it up to a subject to deal, right, which is 80% loan to value. Yep. Right. So I'm going to owe $160,000, and I'm going to have $25,000 from my private lender in cash, plus I'm going to get $11,000 from my buyer. And I'm not even going to talk about this because it's too late. But if we do down payment assistance, we can get another $300 or $400 a month in cash flow. And
that pays the lender.
The lender, that's right.
Yeah, the interest.
So the reason why I write my description the way I write it is until you do math like this, until you look at deals like this, you really don't understand how to look at the deals. Right? You have to look at them this way. Otherwise, you're not really looking at the deals.
What I learned today was when you get the first initial numbers from the seller and you think it's this type of deal, but then, geez, I have these expenses, I can't do that. We'll add up the numbers and see what deal you can do. It might bump up to the one in the hierarchy, the next one up. You do that one. It's okay. Right. It's okay. Right.
So, Sam, I've already answered that question. Which is the best private lender for that? So we use retirement money. So that's the best lender to do that. So somebody that has an IRA, a Roth IRA, a 401k. I usually look for people that have worked for decent sized companies for 10 years. And often, like I have a relative worked for Bristol Myers for 30 years and has hundreds of thousands of dollars in their IRA. Right. So, because they take so much money out per month,
from your pay,
after 30 years, that's a lot of money, right? Business owners is another place to go. I'll bet you any amount of money, Sam, I'll bet you $1,000 that if I got into your life, which I'm not going to do unless you're a coaching client, but if I got into your life, there's at least 5, probably 10 people around you that will lend you money on real estate if you know how to ask them for the money.
Yeah. Because you're doing them a favor. You're not.
Yeah, it's math. You're not showing them the correct math, because the first thing that a lender wants is to know they're going to get their money back and it's safe. Yeah. So the way you do that is by showing them that there's a lot of equity in the house, and even if they took the house back, they could easily go sell it and get their money back. That's the first thing you need to do. So the real way to get money, private money, is to buy the deals correctly. That's the first thing you got to do. Often what I find is with coaching clients is if they're having trouble raising money, it's because they're paying too much for the house.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bad deal.
Yeah.
All right, Peter, hopefully we'll continue to do this. If you guys let me know either by sending me some message at Flipping Houses for Rookies, go to the top right-hand side. I would love some feedback today. If you want to hear more deal structuring, then we can do a whole string of them for the next several weeks. But I'm only going to do that if you guys take action and let me know that you want to do that. Otherwise, I'm probably going to go back to our regular format and do a lot of theory. So let me know. Please go into the chat. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Go into the description of wherever you found us or watching us. There is a link there that will, everything I talked about today, it will slow it down. And there's 10 videos in there for you to watch. We call it the masterclass. You get a new one every day, so you can go nice and slow. It doesn't cost you anything. It's totally for free because when I do stuff like this, I get a lot of questions. It was easier for me to we actually did a seminar and I broke the seminar up into the different pieces of, I actually write them on a whiteboard so you can see the numbers while I'm explaining them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So thank you very much for your support. Make sure you subscribe to us. Make sure you like us. Make sure you give us some feedback. Definitely today, go to flippinghousesforrookies.com, hit the support button and tell me you want to hear more of this or not hear more of this, or tell me what you do want to hear so we can customize it. To be 100% honest with you, I'm on the fence about stopping the podcast at episode 400 because the downloads are down. And I don't want to keep spending 5 or 6 hours of my week making these podcasts and promoting them because I do it for free, which I'm totally fine doing, but I want to make sure it's what you want. If it's not what you want, then I'm going to stop doing it, and I'm going to do it behind a paid portal where the guys that want to hear it will pay for it, and that's it. So I'm trying to decide whether or not I should not continue the podcast anymore or give you the right topics and do get downloads and make sure that we are going to do it. So help me out with that and help your fellow investors out with that by giving me your feedback by going to flippinghousesforrookies.com and clicking the support button on the top right-hand side. Okay, Peter. So have a good week. Flourish and prosper. We will talk to you on episode number 386. Over now.
Thanks for tuning in to the hottest real estate topics on the planet with Bill and Pete. If you want to continue learning how to buy and sell real estate without money or credit, head over to flippinghouses.club for some cutting-edge real estate wealth tools. Or contact us at info@flippinghouses.club.